This presentation is going to talk about the role of a learning guide in your overall course organization. A learning guide is pretty much a document for your students that kind of leads them through a particular module. There are some specific elements of a learning guide. You have your module and course ID. You have learning outcomes, learning resources, activities, self-assessment, and lesson evaluation. I'm going to take you through each one of those segments. First off, a module and course ID is important because you want the student to be able to identify specifically what that document is going to be for, which module and for which course. You may have multiple modules within your course, and you want the student to make sure the student knows which one they have in front of them. Your learning goals, this is a section that should answer the student's question, what do I need to know when I'm done with this module? It is typically worded, upon completion of this module, the student will be able to. At the end of this presentation, I'll actually give you an example of a completed learning guide and show you what these goals typically might look like. You have your learning resources. These are your references the students will need to access this module. Think of it as your lecture or instructional material. It's how the student's going to go through and learn the material that you need them to know. Some examples include course notes, lecture videos and audios, PowerPoints. You can have web resources, or even interactive tutorials that might come with your textbook. You also want to indicate whether they are required or supplemental. You want to distinguish between resources and supplemental ones for the important reason that supplemental resources are helpful for students who want to explore the topic further, but make it clear that those are optional for those students who just want to get through the material and then move on to the next module. Web resources have some additional information you need to be aware of. If you use a website, you want to give the student some additional info. Think about what it is you want the student to do with the link. Do you want them to just skim through the contents, or should they be able to grasp the details that are there? Is it an overview, or is it a detailed version of one of the important concepts of the unit? You want to give the students the context in which the website falls into the course and the particular reason they are directed to it. You want to ask yourself, what are they supposed to do when they get there? What are they supposed to bring back? In other words, an assignment or something of that nature. Where do they turn this in? If you can't answer those questions, you might want to reconsider whether or not to use that link in your course materials. Your learning activities are just the specific assignments that you want your students to do throughout the course. You want to be very specific here. Think of this as a checklist for students as they to make sure that they do all of their work. Anything you expect them to complete should be explicitly listed here. Some important information for your learning activities. For each of the assignments, students are going to need very specific details. I can't stress this point enough. You want to make sure that at a bare minimum, the student knows what to do, how to do it, how it's going to be graded, where they turn in the assignment, how should they label the assignment, the file name included, how they should turn it in, and the date and time it is due. Not just the date, but the date and time. And you want to be specific. Answering these questions in advance is going to save you a great deal of time. A lot of the correspondence with your students is going to be for clarification on a particular topic. If this is the first time you're teaching your course, I would strongly encourage you to make notes of the frequently asked questions the students have so that you can go back in your course and actually give more detailed information so the next time you won't have the number of questions. This is an example of an assignment instruction for a PowerPoint presentation I gave. You'll notice that I gave them a pretty detailed topic description. Down at the bottom, you'll notice that I gave them some specific instructions. You know, what to do, what they should do prior to starting it, and I gave them a grading rubric, which we'll talk about next. I also told them what file name to use and where to go to submit it. The grading rubric is also an important tool here. Anytime you give a assignment to your students, you want to be very explicit about how you're going to get your grade, how their grade is going to be accomplished. So, typically when I give projects of this nature, I will include some type of grading rubric that looks something similar to what you see here. Just some final thoughts on assignments. You want to set high expectations, but part of that is modeling examples for the students. Giving a sample completed assignment that you deem excellent is sometimes an option that you want to include, especially on a major assignment. The more the students understand your expectations, the more likely than they are to meet them. You also want to include some form of self-assessment. This is a good practice that gives the students an opportunity to actually gauge their progress throughout the module and to see if they're ready to start a graded assignment. This is an opportunity for the students to find their weak areas and actually go back and review the course material again on those particular topics which they weren't very successful on. Some examples, in a clinical type course, you may give them a scenario. In other words, you should be able to take blood pressure accurately within 2 minutes at least 3 out of 4 times. You may give them a practice quiz. You may give them a solution file if there are specific exercises for your course, so they can actually check their work for themselves. Lesson evaluation is a show me what you've learned section. Any assignments, quizzes, projects, etc. that you are assigning a grade should be listed here. Finally, what I have here is a completed learning guide, and this is the document that your students, something similar that your students should have. In this course, I'm actually going to give you the form, and you can actually use it and fill it out, or you can use one of your own. But you'll notice under the learning goals and outcomes, it specifically says upon completion the student will be able to, and in this case, create a basic presentation in PowerPoint. And it goes on and continues with the goals that I have set for them in that module. Under the required resources, I use their textbook as a reference. I've given them a PowerPoint presentation, and then I have 4 lecture videos that I want them to go through, and those are my required items. And additionally, I give them a website for presentation skills, and a video on YouTube how not to use PowerPoint. Under the learning activities, I list explicitly all of those things I want them to complete. You'll notice that this includes graded and self-assessment items. In the middle there we have our discussion question. You always want to have some type of collaborative environment for your students to actually take the place of your discussion in the classroom. It can be a discussion board, it can be a blog, a wiki, it can be any of the tools that you have available, but it's really good to give some type of a discussion question. And then finally, I have listed the self-assessment. The assignments and quizzes, I've actually given them solution files, and those are practice quizzes they can take multiple times. And then finally, I have 2 graded assignments from this particular module, and those are listed there. So you want to work through at this point and actually create your learning guide for your course.